Okay, ladies and gentlemen, today we have Dustin Bomley, GM over at Alpine Industrial Manufacturing. So this is actually a friend of one of our team members here that we invited on because we wanted to talk everything manufacturing. So Dustin, thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. Yeah. So I'll just, like I said, I want to dive in kind of with your history a little bit. Alpine, how you even started, the bow archery side of things, all that. You know, how did you even, you said you were sweeping the floors there when you first got started or something like that. How did you get started?
Well, I mean, if you want to go from the history, my uncle passed away when I was about 13, 14 years old. And my grandparents gave me his archery equipment.
That's cool.
And I started shooting a bow when I was in my teens. It's kind of interesting because I went to a private Christian school, and we didn't have a lot of sports opportunities, and so I took up archery. And it was something that I was pretty decent at. I had a couple of older men that kind of took me under their wing and taught me how to shoot, and so it was something that I got very good at. I'm trying to be humble here, but at the time when I was a teenager, I was winning tournaments.
That's awesome.
Going to different shoots and met a lot of people, and I loved it.
That's so cool.
So it kind of led me into the industry. I wanted to work in that industry, and so when I started with Alpine, I started at the bottom. I was building bows and doing some warranty work, and then I moved into a production manager type of a position. So I was orchestrating the production. Then into more of an operations manager as the company started to change what we were doing. And then just about 4.5 years ago, I took over as general manager of the business.
That's awesome. Bows only at the time when you were going up through the ranks, or was it you guys doing also the machining side too?
Machining side as well, okay. But we were doing bows and accessories. On our accessory line, we outsourced some of that stuff because it was plastic injection molding and some of that type of stuff. But for the most part, any of the metal machine work, we did all of that in house.
So we don't have any lathes that you saw, in which we would have any need for them. But I do know a little bit about that just from wood shop and kind of tinkering on my own and stuff. But can you kind of walk me through some of the equipment a little bit, especially the lathes? That always interests me. And I do know some of the models. Can you kind of walk me through what you guys have now?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we actually have 8. Currently, we have 8 of old screw machines. They're all Brown and Sharp screw machines from 1940s and 50s vintage.
That's cool.
They were basically taken out of the lime mines when the military had them built during the war effort. And then they would take them out and sell them off. And we bought, at one point in time, we had 15 of them. And we've narrowed that scope down to 8. We have 8 CNC lathes. 6 of them are Akuma Captain lathes. Of those 6, 5 of them have live tooling. And then we have 2 Haas lathes that have sub spindles and Y-axis milling. So they can do quite a bit more.
A lot more versatility there for sure.
We have 2 Swiss lathes. They're Citizen Swiss lathes, and they have 9-axis milling. They're pretty amazing machines. And then I have 5 Haas CNC milling machines. So we have a lot of capacity, and we can pretty much make anything.
That's awesome. So was that equipment also being used when you guys were doing bows and stuff even way back then?
Some of it. We've increased our capacities quite a bit over the last 4 or 5 years, but we did do a lot of mill work, and we got into the lathe work and the screw machine stuff. We expanded that at one point in time. Since the outdoor industry is so cyclical, we needed to level out our sales, and so we got into doing some job shop work with the screw machines, and then we got into the lathe work at that point in time. But we had CNC machines, and we were doing all the milling in house for our archery products.
Are you like self-taught with all this work?
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. So are you still learning even after doing all these years? Something new equipment, new styles, or is it kind of like you feel like you've been around the loop, kind of with everything that there is to know about this?
Honestly, I have the mindset that if you can't learn something new every day, life isn't worth it. I
agree.
You really need to learn something new every day.
Yeah.
So, I personally like to challenge myself to go out and try to figure something new out every day. And with the amount of machinery we have and the different customer base that we have, it's not hard to learn something
awesome.
new every day.
Like we were talking out there, the balance between good machinery, like, and then like traditionalistic stuff. I'm always trying to get smarter, learn more, same kind of, I like that same kind of mentality. And we have some equipment that I showed you, like those stitcher machines are from the 60s and 70s, and they're cool, but if a part breaks, you're kind of done, and so to speak. There's ways and stuff, but is there similar things? Is your equipment old, new? Is it the same kind of style a little bit, like with these lathes, that the older ones, if something breaks, like there's only that one guy somewhere who can work on it?
The old screw machines, the Brown and Sharps and the double aughts are that way. And we're getting to the point now where we're actually having to buy either used parts, search out and buy used parts if we have a failure, or fabricate something in order to make the machine work. So I do foresee in the not too distant future that we'll end up having to upgrade those machines to NC controlled machines. And there are those available, but until then, we're still functioning with some of these older machines, and they still hold tolerance and they still make good parts. But there is that, we do have a guy that runs those machines. We have a guy that helps him, but we have a guy that runs those machines, and he's the one that he's hard to find. Though that guy is hard to find.
I'm sure I can relate with you, or you can relate with me on this too. Workforce, bringing on people, young people, older guys, training them, all this kind of, how you doing? How you doing with that, Dustin?
Well, everybody that is a trained machinist is trained differently than what you need them, it seems. So what I like to do personally is we bring somebody in and we start from the ground level, and they start working their way up and learning new stuff all the time. We do have different types of items that we do, and some of those guys that are old school machinists, they have to change their mindset a little bit. And a lot of times we have guys that don't have any experience. And I find that it's easier to bring the guy in that doesn't have experience and spend the time over, 3, 6, 9 months to get him up to speed, versus having to bring somebody in that has a certain amount of experience that has to change their mindset of how we do things.
Interesting. You guys are in Lewiston.
Yes.
Smaller town, it's smaller than Spokane. It's not tiny, but it's smaller than Spokane. Guys out there, easier to find, harder to find. Do you have people coming from far away to work for you, or how's that kind of system?
We obviously don't have the demographic to pick from like they do up in the Spokane area, Coeur d'Alene. But there again, our business or our company is still small enough that, and we have long-standing people. I was just looking actually the other day at the length of time that we have people employed, and I have pretty much my newest person there right now full time is almost 2 years.
Wow, that's awesome.
But I've got guys there from 6, 12, and in their 20s, and I've been with the business just barely over 30.
That's special. That means you guys do a good job and you take care of your people. That's really good.
We're keeping them on board.
Yeah, that's huge. We're seeing that too. It's like, because it's a craft, I do use the word career because I feel like you can make a career out of this, and there's an investment from the guy, especially if someone's brand new. There's an investment of, we're investing into them to teach them, but then there's an investment from them where they're dedicating time to kind of learn the craft. So we're big on that. We try to do really a lot with the company culture side of things for people to feel like they're a part of the bigger mission, kind of the bigger vision. I think if you win that, if you have that, then a guy doesn't have a problem working somewhere for 10 or 15 years.
Obviously with the pandemic situation that happened a few years ago, it got to the point where it was tough to find people. And I had to think a little bit outside the box. And honestly, we hired a couple of kids out of high school.
Wow.
And I got one young man that's working for us right now that's still in high school. And he's great. He's going through the precision machining courses at high school, but also being able to come and apply them in the workforce. And, he asks all the right questions. He's ambitious, and it's been a really, really good fit for us. And it also is, good for him. But you also, in that regard, you can't expect somebody to stick around once they get out of high school. They may have bigger ambitions, but we're giving him life skills and opportunities. That's something that he can take with him even when he leaves high school, goes to college, figures out what he wants to do for life.
Can you run everything in the shop? Can you run all the machinery?
Oh, no.
No?
I'll break stuff down if I have to go do that.
That's funny.
At one point in time, I was versed in everything that we had, but we brought in some new equipment that I couldn't actually go out and run it. I'm dangerous enough to go out and pull reports and find out,
Yeah.
what's going on them. And,
Yeah,
I
that's
can
okay.
look at the cycle times and make sure things are running up to speed and make sure that things are efficient. But to actually do the everyday in the machine, I'm a little rusty.
A little rusty. That's fine. That's okay. Hey, that's the normal process, right? Because you're going up, and your other things are more important to you right now on the plate that you got to take care of. So,
well, as long as I'm able to, maintain our customer base and make sure that we're getting orders all the time, and that we're having, our customers are happy with the product that we're getting or that they're getting, that we're making for them. I kind of view that as my job, to make sure that my guys have a job.
Yeah, that's right. That's
make sure that my machinists are busy, because I'm able to go out and cultivate some more business.
Talk to me more about archery. That's the topic I'm interested in. I enjoy the outdoors. I enjoy doing all that. You mentioned you grew up shooting in competitions. I'm sure you started hunting at a young age. Can you talk to me a little bit about equipment and bows you've used, kind of what you like to hunt for? Can you kind of...
Well, honestly, it's been interesting, because I started out, like I said, with my uncle's bow. It was a recurve bow, all traditional equipment. When I was a teen, I worked a little bit with a sporting goods company, a little
That's cool.
Mom and pop shop, and I got my first compound bow, and I shot my first deer when I was 15 years old with my compound bow, and then I got into the competition side of things, and I did do quite a bit of hunting at that point. And really that drove me more, I think, than the competition side. I got into the competition, and it really led me into the industry. But the longer I spent in the industry, the less I wanted to compete, and the more I wanted to be in the woods and really doing the hunting. I thoroughly enjoy God's creation, and,
awesome.
and being able to be out there in it. It's my battery recharge, to be honest with you. But yeah, I competed at the national and international level, and in fact, I was going through, we moved here about a year ago, and going through some stuff the other day, and I pulled a bronze medal out and showed my wife and said, this was North American Field Archery Championships, Canada, United States, and Mexico. And I ended up in second place and tied, and we had a shoot off. And in field archery, it's 4 arrows per target, and we had the shoot off, and we went 8 targets until I dropped a point, and ended up with the bronze medal. But it was, honestly, it's the smallest little thing, but it's the one that probably meant the most to me in my competitive career.
Wow. Can you talk about the connection between your competitive career and like hunting? Did that make you a better archer? Did that make you a better hunter, or unrelated?
Honestly, I think I started bow hunting before I started hunting with any other firearms or weapons. And I think that alone made me a better hunter. It gave me respect for the animal, and it made me understand shot placement and anatomy. I didn't, honestly, in school, I didn't do all that great in school and especially in science, until I shot my first deer. And so a friend of mine, my dad was busy that night, and a friend of mine helped me and kind of coached me through field dressing this deer. And once I did that, I started to kind of get anatomy a little bit and understand it a little more. And so I started to pass my biology class.
Really? So, that is awesome.
At any rate,
wow.
The competition side of things, did it drive me to be a better hunter? I think it drove me to be a better shot.
That's awesome.
And it drove me to be more familiar with my equipment. And I think in any aspect of life, if you're efficient with the equipment that you use for a job or for even a hobby, fishermen, they have to be efficient with their equipment. They got to understand what they're using in order to catch the fish that they're after.
Yeah.
And, a hunter, they have to understand their quarry, but they also have to be comfortable with their equipment. And honestly, as a Christian man, you have to be versed in the Word.
That's right.
To get along in life and be able to function at a level that we as men, Christian men, want to function.
That's right.
Raise our family, and
equipped. The word is equipped.
You got to be equipped, and you got to be efficient with it.
That's right. I could speak a lot on that. I mean, the principles that, I'm not an avid hunter by any means, and I've never really delved into that world. I fished a lot as a kid and, camped and all that stuff, but, you just talk about this relationship between like principles of even like, I grew up in the church, these biblical principles, just loving the Lord, letting the Lord work on me and my heart and stuff. And now seeing those life skills, how they're applying just in everything that I'm doing. It's like, sometimes people talk about this thing. There's like, there's God, church, and family. And I've changed recently my mentality. It's like God is in all of those things. And the same principles, they're in all of those things. Whether you're hunting, business, bootmaking, archery, it's like those principles, it's like if you can learn them and equip yourself with them, it's just going to bless you.
Well, and you got to be efficient.
Exactly.
You got to be proficient.
Yeah.
Like I was telling you before, I grew up in a Christian school, and, the Word of God was ingrained into us. And I even now, I'm 50 years old, and there's even times now when I think back on scripture memorization when I was a teenager, and I can recall some of that and
That's cool.
and learn how to apply it. I was listening actually to a message on the way up here to Spokane to do this with you, and it was the guy was talking about our faith, and he said, faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word.
That's right.
And he was talking about the word is something that is transfers from generation to generation. Yeah. He says, if you put God in the center of your family, in the center of your home, your kids will understand the word, and they'll understand, and it'll be that passing down or passing on of the word. It's generational, not a generational curse, but a generational blessing.
That's right.
So that's one thing that, my wife and I both, we will be celebrating 24 years of marriage here in December. And we definitely put God in the center of our home. And, my boys understand that. My oldest son, he decided he wanted to go to a different church. And, my wife is all about wanting to keep the family together. But I told her, I said, we're not going to die on this mountain. That's right. We're not going to fight this battle, because honestly, he's getting up in the morning on his own with a desire to hear the word, and he's going to a church that preaches the word, and we're not gonna keep him from it.
That's really healthy.
Obviously his girlfriend went to that church, but hey.
Hey, at youth group, I'll tell you, all the guys, I don't know if their intentions were as much going to service for service as it was to, see the ladies. And that's okay, and that's good, and that's fine, and that's really funny. Yeah. That's good. I resonate with that one. That's good. Can you talk a little more about, I liked when you were just mentioning archery and hunting. Can you talk a little bit more about, so, you're learning to do these bows, you're doing this competitive archery, getting into hunting, and then, you're transitioning kind of more into this machine, running the business more, kind of getting up there. Do you still hunt? Is that still a passion? How has that helped you be a better leader or businessman, or has it not? Is it unrelated? Is it related? Is there something, can you say that, if men take up hunting or take up the outdoors, is that going to help them be better men? Can you speak a little bit more on that topic?
Well, honestly, hunting is very much a passion in my life. And it's something that my wife didn't actually, I think, truly know what she was getting into when she married me. But she's learned over the years. We did transition, in the archery side of things. And being in business, it was hard to want to go out and shoot my bow every day after I'd get off of work. About 5 years ago, we sold the archery brand. And so we're now Alpine Industrial Manufacturing. And we don't do the archery stuff anymore. We still have our finger on the pulse of the outdoor industry with some of our DBAs, doing business as. But since we've sold the archery brand, I'll be honest with you, it's been refreshing to actually go out and shoot my bow or shoot a handgun or shoot a rifle and be involved in what I had a passion for from the very beginning. I told you that, going out in the outdoors it recharges my batteries. And when I spend time, honestly, just spend time in creation, fresh air and, seeing the animals and breathing the air and watching the weather patterns and just enjoying what God's created for me and for us, it does recharge my batteries. And I do think that my employees at work probably could say the same thing, because when I get back from a hunting trip, I'm usually a little easier to get along with.
A little bit chipper. Yeah. So, that's funny. That's good.
Do I think that every man should do it? I think, honestly, if it's something that you desire or you want to learn more about, there's a lot of avenues to learn it. I've taught bow hunter education and hunter education for Idaho State Fish and Game. And, seeing people succeed in that has been something that's really been fun for me. So I've been able to take my passion and actually share it. And in sharing that, I always make sure that they have my email address. So when when they are successful in their own right, they can send me pictures and tell me stories. And that's one thing that I've taught my boys too, is to learn how to share in other people's successes.
Yeah.
And if I've done nothing else right, I've done that.
That's awesome. Where do you see hunting going for the state of Idaho, or just in general? Is the culture improving, getting worse? What's your outlook? 'Cause I didn't know you used to teach hunting certificates. That means you're really in it. Talk to us about the future of hunting.
I do think that there's several schools of thought on that. There's a lot of people that'll say that hunting is going to turn into a rich man's sport, and there is some areas in some states that it does seem that way.
Yeah.
But there's also, in most places, there's still that grassroots culture of hunter-gatherer. And I think that as long as we as hunters, we're conservationists. We really, if you really believe in conservation, that's really what it is. Because if you were to just allow a species to just be on its own and do its own thing, it's going to end up dying off.
Yeah.
And as hunters, we actually we help out the economy. We also manage the wildlife, and that's the biggest thing I think that hunters need to grab hold of, is that we're wildlife managers. And the states, there's certain states that use that as a tool, and they use it properly. Most states do in their fish and game departments, and we have to grab a hold of that. A lot of times hunting in general gets a bad rap because of how people personify it for those that are either anti-hunters or non-hunters. And I believe in anything, we need to educate ourselves before we jump to a conclusion. And I try not to force that down anybody's throat, but if they want to get in that conversation, then understanding carrying capacities and understanding wildlife management practices and understanding what you're doing to further the process. I think it's a big thing. I had a friend of mine that was Idaho state legislator, and she was very against bear baiting. And she called me up one day and she said, "Hey, my stance on this, but I'm interested to hear your point of view." And so we spent about an hour and a half on the phone and talked about it, and I gave her my point of view, but I also gave her points to be educated on, and she went and educated herself on it. And she did call me back later. She goes, "We have to agree to disagree, but from a legislative standpoint," she said, "I understand that what you're doing is managing." They did a census study in a certain area there in the state of Idaho, and the bear population, a healthy bear population is like 1.5 bears per square mile, and overpopulation is classified as 4 bears per square mile. Well, this particular area was at 7 bears per square mile.
Wow.
And I think it was done in like 1996 or 99 when that census was done. So they used the hunters in that area and allowed them to have 2 tags. And they opened the opportunity for, extra baiting and hound hunting and different avenues of harvest. And they did that to manage that bear population.
Wow, that's extremely that's huge population. That's 7 times. That's wow.
Yeah, it's extreme. And so they had to get control of that. But what that also did is it was affecting the deer and elk and the moose population in that area because predation was so high. So in using the hunter as a game management tool, they were able to manage several different species of animals, not just one.
Yeah. I want to ask you kind of it's maybe not an edgy question, but personally for me. So, in the state of Washington, I don't know the details, but we've been having this thing with wolves for some time, and it's like, the only reason I am even really aware of this is because of our customer base. Mm-hmm. We have so many customers that come to us that I just know personally over the years that they live up north and, Colville and Elk and Newport, or they live down south, and mostly it's coming from the north, and, they're like, they're not crying, but they're borderline crying, and they're saying like, our flocks and herds and stuff, it's a problem. They're getting attacked by wolves. I also know that at one point the wolf population was like low. Like maybe I don't know, that was way back when. Can you kind of educate me personally a little bit on that? But like, what's your viewpoint, and why do you think there's this divide? Why do you think there's this people who are this, hey, no, we can't do that, and they seem to not have sympathy for the farmer, but then you have the, like, what is the farmer supposed to do? Can you decipher that a little bit.
Well, you do have to understand this is all opinion when I'm speaking.
Of course, I completely understand. Yeah.
My father-in-law says something that I try to apply in many different aspects in life. It's called everything in moderation. But it seems that there's extremes on both sides.
Yeah.
And so I try to be I try to have more perspective on this than some people choose to. Am I a proponent of the wolf? I think I personally see that they do a lot of damage to our wildlife herds and to the livestock in many areas. So what I am a proponent of is just like what I was talking about with that bear situation is wildlife management. And, I know Idaho Fish and Game, for the longest time, the wolf was reintroduced. And the wolf that they reintroduced was not a wolf that had originally been native to the area. There are lots of different opinions around that. Do I think it needs to be managed? Absolutely, I do. Because if you don't manage it, there again, it's going to take its toll on the other aspects of wildlife. And the wolf is something that I do think, have I harvested a wolf? Yeah, I have. I have a full body wolf mount at my house. Wow. And, some people don't like that. But there again, I think I encourage them to take the time to educate themselves on really the effects of wolves. They do affect the wildlife. And, in the area that I ended up harvesting my wolf in, I was actually moose hunting. And that area they've reduced the number of moose tags in that area because of the depredation or the predation of the wolf and the lack of moose in that area that used to be a plethora of moose. So, do they affect the wildlife and the livestock? Absolutely, they do. In my opinion, they do need to be managed. Do they need to be eradicated? That's an argumentative point, and you're going to have
different opinions for
varying opinions on that side. Yeah. I know I have some friends that are Native American. They're Nez Perce tribe. They're out of Lewiston, and they were 100% for the wolf reintroduction. And that was, in my own opinion, that's really where a lot of it stemmed from. The Native Americans wanted them reintroduced. And they have their reasons. And then from the bureaucratic standpoint, with the Department of Agriculture or the Department of Wildlife and then federal side of things, they introduced them and ended up not managing them. So it took a long time for some of the states, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, and I'm not sure where Montana is with it, to actually get them delisted from being protected, so they could actually manage them. And
wow.
Our governor in Idaho at the time stood up and stiffened his neck and said, sorry, but we're going to do this. We're going to manage this because it's not just affecting our wildlife, but now it's starting to affect our livestock.
Yeah.
So.
As a whole, do you feel that, so when I say Pacific Northwest, I would refer to, let's say, Washington State, Idaho, and Oregon. That's kind of like this little triangle. Do you feel that as a whole, and those states may vary in the way they do it, but do you think they do a pretty good job with management? Do you think that there's always room for improvement? But
I think each of the states has their strengths and weaknesses. Idaho has struggled to really produce quality elk, where Washington, especially in the eastern side of Washington, in the Blues, they produce tremendous quality of elk. Oregon, they tend to have their hunting opportunities have been quite good over the last couple of decades or
Have you hunted in all three states that we mentioned? Yeah.
Colorado, Wyoming, those are a couple of my favorite states to hunt.
That's awesome. So as a whole, the Pacific Northwest has its strengths and weaknesses, but overall, pretty okay.
Yeah, I think every state has its strengths and weaknesses. Yeah. And I mean, if you want to hunt wolves, come to Idaho. If you want to hunt elk, take your chance at drawing a spectacular elk tag in Washington. Yeah. I mean, there's good and bad in everything. I mean, the quantity of elk, if you're an elk hunter, is in Colorado. This year, I have the opportunity to go out of state again. Last year, I went to Wyoming and was able to harvest a nice bull. But it's a matter of figuring it out. And sometimes you got to wait because different states, they manage them differently. It might take you longer to draw a tag, and that's fine if you're willing to wait and have a crack at a really big trophy. And it's not always about the trophy. For me, I like the experience, but You know, there's those guys out there that want the big trophy. Let's be honest. Competitively, men, we're competitive. We want the big trophy.
Of course, yeah. You want to go, if you're going to do it, you want to be number one, right? Yeah. Maybe when you were like, let's say, 17, 18, 19, that season to today, more hunters, less hunters, more popular, less popular?
Way more hunters now than there was when I was younger.
I would have not thought that. I would have thought it would have been the other way around.
You know, the interesting part about that, though, is if you go archery hunters have probably been less, just simply because the industry as a whole really struggled recruiting younger archers for a lot of years. And in the last probably 8 to 10 years, they've done a good job of starting to get back into that recruitment of younger archers and bow hunters. For a long time, the average recruitment age of new bow hunters was in that high 30s, low 40s.
Wow. That's not young for sure. Yeah.
And now it seems to be some of the younger kids are stepping up and
that's really cool. Archery. Is it just because it's that much more difficult than a rifle?
There's many different things that draw people to the woods.
Sure.
And, some of them really like that archery aspect because it is more challenging. A lot of people will say they like archery because they like being in the woods in September rather than wait until October or November. You get an earlier opportunity, and usually the seasons are a little bit longer. And your harvest rates are less.
Yeah.
So your percentage of success is a lot less than that of with a firearm.
Very well. That's never. I would have not. That's not the direction that I thought you would have. I would have thought you would have said there would have been less hunting today, and it's like getting smaller and smaller, just because it seems that maybe like the younger guys, like around my age, there's less of them that seem to be interested in those kinds of things. But it could be really area to area, and just kind of like culture to culture.
I think you're going to see that. I think different states are gonna do better and worse in recruitment of hunters.
Yeah.
So
can you give us just the craziest hunting story that you've ever had? Something juicy.
Oh goodness, this is kind of a crazy hunting story.
Yeah.
So a few friends of mine, we were hunting bears, and we had a young man that had never hunted bears before, sitting on one of the bait sites that we had, and we left him alone on the bait site and told him we'd come back when it was getting close to dark to get him. And we were literally on our way back in to retrieve him from the bait site, and we all heard a gunshot. So we made our way down to the bait site, and he gets down out of the tree stand, and I asked him, I said, well, how big of a bear was it? First of all, did you shoot? Yeah, I shot. Well, how big of a bear was it? And he goes, I don't know. It was medium size. And he didn't know how to judge bears and how big
first
they
time
were.
For him, yeah.
First time. And I said, well, how big was its head? Well, I don't know, medium size. And I said, how big were its ears? He goes, they weren't very big. Well, big bears have little ears. Their head is big. Their ears look really small. Yeah. So I'm thinking, we might have a pretty good bear on our hands here. So we start down the blood trail because it took off over the ridge. And we start going on this blood trail, and it looks like a D8 cat had gone down through this foliage. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this might be a big bear. And we got down to it, and we're about, 15, 20 yards from it. And there's 4 or 5 of us. And I had one of my friends, he was a pharmacist. His name was John. We called him Pharmacist John. He handed me his handgun because I was in the front of the line, and walked down to this bear. And I was looking at it, and I thought I saw it twitch. And I'm like, oh yeah, no big deal. It's just a nerve thing.
Sure.
So I hand him the handgun back, and I walk down to this bear, and it's a huge bear. I mean, it's a chocolate colored, probably 325 pound. And in the spring, that's a big bear in the spring, because they've just come out of hibernation, and have one that big was something to behold.
Yeah.
And probably one of the biggest bears I'd seen killed in that area in the years that I'd hunted. And I walked up to this bear, and I straddled it. And my friend Stacy, he got down right in front of it, and I grabbed hold of that bear with both hands by the ears to pull its head up, and it started snapping and growling. It was still alive.
Oh my goodness.
I jumped about 3 feet in the air, and we all went flying up the hill. And my friend Stacy dropped his bone saw right in front of it, and he told me, he says, "You need to go down and get that bone saw." I said, "No, we'll get it tomorrow." We all packed out of there, and we went back in the next morning to get it. And when we got back down there to get it the next morning, it was another 15 yards down the hill.
Wow.
So
wow.
I'm like, we were lucky.
Yeah,
It really brought to mind that adage that says familiarity breeds contempt.
Yeah.
I was so comfortable around the bears because I've hunted them and had been around them all season. And I just took for granted the fact that he could still be alive.
Yeah.
And so
you were so comfortable. Yeah.
I grabbed hold of him, and it could have meant he could have grabbed hold of me, but
wow.
We ended up getting out of there safely. But it's something that was, when people talk to me about the craziest hunting story, that's probably it.
Do you hear, I guess I don't know the statistics or anything. Maybe you don't either, but I mean, do you hear a lot of stories like, hey man, this bear charged me and somebody got hurt actually, or like, is that pretty rare and a lot has to go wrong for that to happen?
Yeah. Once in a while. And you gotta be aware. You gotta keep your head on a swivel when you're dealing with a predator, especially when you're baiting, because you're dealing with a predator at a food source.
Yeah, sure. It's probably a little different if it's, maybe like a deer or elk or something like that, because that's not really a predator.
Here just last year, there was a lady in Leavenworth that got attacked by a bear, and come to find out it was my brother-in-law's aunt.
Wow.
I didn't know that at the time, but you just have to be aware when you're dealing with a sow with cubs. They're very, very, very defensive, and if you're around with a sow with young, back away. Give them a wide berth.
Of course, yeah. Let me ask you this, and we should talk about it because we're at our boot company. I want to get your opinion a little bit about just footwear and kind of hunting boots a little bit, because we always talk about maybe doing something outdoors as well. Mm-hmm. What do you like? What's your ideal hunting boot, I guess? Like, what are you looking for? And you've been doing this for so many years. I'm sure you've gone through lots of boots. Build me the dream hunting footwear boot. What's it going to feel like? What's it going to look like? What's it going to do for you?
Well, I'll tell you this. I told Jack, your guy that works here that's been my friend for years, I told him, I said, one hunting boot doesn't work for everything. So what I would recommend personally is having,
multiple
hunting boots for different applications.
Yeah.
Personally, I've hunted the wet tundra in northern Quebec. I've hunted in Alberta. I've hunted a lot of different places in the United States and different seasons. I've hunted the desert down in Mexico, and last year I was able to go down and hunt in the Savannah and the Karoo in South Africa.
Wow.
So the application is really what's going to dictate the perfect hunting boot.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
If you're back east and sitting in a tree stand hunting whitetails in the frigid winter cold, you're going to need something that's going to basically keep your feet warm because you're sitting there doing nothing. I personally, being a Western hunter, I like to get out and cover the country. I like to hike. I like to put the miles on. I like having like an air bob type sole.
Yeah.
I personally like a sewn sole boot. Many like the cup sole, but I like the sewn sole. I like a high, at least a 10-inch upper on it because I like to have the support on my calf and Achilles tendon. The footbed is important, and I like to keep my feet warm and dry. So, a Thinsulate insulation or a Gore-Tex or whatever that would keep it
just dry.
Whatever membrane to keep it dry. So my perfect hunting boot would be a sewn sole with an air bob. And probably 200, 400 grams Thinsulate.
Would you rather prefer something a little thinner, nimble, quick, like flexible, or maybe a little stiff, heavy duty, balance for sure? You're never going to twist your ankle. Tough question, and that might not be. Might not be an answer.
There again, it becomes application. If you're hunting early season in September and you're bow hunting and you're climbing up and down the hills chasing elk, you want something quick and nimble and lightweight, and you're going to want that early season boot that isn't necessarily insulated.
Right.
If you're hunting later October, November, maybe even a muzzleloader season in December, you're going to want something you're going to have good traction. You're going to want to have good stability because you could be on a hill and it could get slick or muddy or, icy, and you want something that's going to give you good support. So again, I'm going to defer back to it. All depends on the application.
All depends on the application.
If you, my personal opinion is I try to have a boot that's going to cover multiple seasons, and that's why I'm saying good support. I'm okay with having a little bit heavier boot personally. Some people like the lighter boot, but I'm okay with having a little heavier boot if it offers the support and the traction that I need.
How many states have you hunted in? Do you know?
Oh, geez. 8 or 9.
How many countries?
4. Canada, United States, Mexico, and South Africa.
So you've definitely been around a lot of different communities of hunting and different cultures and, thoughts on it as well. Talk to me a little bit maybe from like maybe the branding kind of marketing side. What type of individual is a dedicated hunter? Like, and what are they like? How do we talk to them? Because I want to be able, if we're going to do this and getting kind of into the outdoor game, we want to speak their language. And like, what do you think? What do you think is the temperament of a hunter? What are they after? What are they like? What are they usually? There's not a lot of professional hunters that do it full time. So usually they probably have careers and jobs and other things. Like, what does that person usually look like?
Well, I mean,
big question. I know that's a big question.
It is. That's a very broad question because you have to cater to, when you say professional hunter, in South Africa, for instance, they call them a PH, which is a professional hunter, and they physically go through classes and have to be basically licensed. In the United States, you can go through some of that stuff and get a guide's license. I personally I've been a licensed guide for several years.
That's
and,
awesome.
Have the opportunity to go out and do that. To cater to the customer base, I really think that's broad, because honestly, some hunters are weekend warriors. They are just going to go out there. They're looking for an inexpensive piece of footwear that is going to last them a couple of weeks every season. Then you've got your hardcore guy that's, they don't work the months of September, October, November. They take them all off and they hunt and they fish and they get out in the wilds and they may use a boot in a season. They may wear it out. You're going to have the guy that's willing to spend $600 on a good pair of boots, and you're going to have the guy that's going to be like, I wouldn't spend 30. Because it's only got to last me 3 weekends of the season. It's really broad. How do you get to those guys? Honestly, that's probably a mythical question.
Sure.
Because it's really tough. If you were to look and watch the Outdoor Channel and how different companies are branding their companies, there's a lot of different viewpoints on marketing and how to reach certain people. And, you have to pay attention to the guy that is the economy-minded guy, and you got to pay attention to the guy that's that hardcore true blue. I'm out there giving it everything I got all season. That's a tough question.
When you guys were doing the archery, you don't do it now, but when you were making bows, were you a higher price point, lower price point? And did you feel like, hey, did you guys have a couple different price points, or was it just like, this is the one bow that we made and this is who we're making it for? Like, what was the experience there with kind of that?
We had entry-level product for the entry-level guy. We really targeted the young archer, the youth, with our micro line. But then we also had a flagship high-end product every year. And that's the one thing that I think any company struggles at, is having that breadth and being able to maintain it. And that's the one thing that we did see in the archery industry, is that we didn't advertise as well as some of the other bigger companies, your Matthews and PSE and Hoyts. And so to be able to get the product off the shelf wasn't as easy for us. But what we did notice is that our mid price point was always the one that we had higher sales on. Not necessarily the entry level, not necessarily the flagship, but our mid price point.
Very interesting. And usually younger generation getting into it. Was that who you guys were kind of targeting?
It was across the board. Age band.
And today, Alpine, not doing archery anymore. You guys aren't even really marketing to the world. It's more direct to business, right? So you guys are working with B2B, so business to business.
Yeah, we're pretty much now, we sold the Archery brand, and the company that took it over was a longtime archery distributor. And they basically elected to get out of the bows, and they still produce the accessory line. And they do a great job at it. Yeah. What we've done is we've morphed into a job shop manufacturing facility. So we don't necessarily have to go out and advertise to the world that, hey, this is a product that we offer, because we're not trying to target a consumer necessarily. We're targeting another manufacturer. We're building component parts for something else that's bigger.
Yeah.
We do a lot of work for the local jet boat manufacturers, home heating industry, irrigation industry, mining industry, concrete plants, precast plants.
Different business. For us, we're complete opposite in terms of, we're only consumer focused because we're direct to customer, so, we have conversations like I was showing you today, like with our website, always tinkering with this, tinkering with that, can we make it more simple? Can we make it more easy to understand? So it's a greater challenge in the fact that you really are trying to cater to as many people with, one piece of communication, right? Because we can't have 10 different websites for 10 different ways to perceive information. It's, one website. So how do you have a silver bullet in a sense? But the reward is great because when you work direct to customer or direct to consumer, we're not working through another retailer, and we keep more, there's more profit in it, but there's more work, but the reward is there, And also I think it's a little bit of a deeper relationship because then you have the consumer who, like, they fall in love with the brand and they're with you for years. Yeah. And that's cool. And that's special.
And we saw that in the archery world too.
Yeah, I'm
we
sure
still
you did.
had our, true blue dyed-in-the-wool Alpine archery guys.
Yeah.
In fact, we still hear from them once in a while.
That's cool.
But where we're at now, it really, we aren't direct to customer, like you say, and but the business itself and manufacturing itself doesn't change. You're still making a product, following up on your quality control, and making sure that the product that you send to the customer and ultimately the end user still maintains, the integrity and the design criteria and the stuff that it needs to. So, whether you're making boots or whether you're making irrigation parts, they still have to be made right. They still have to be made well. And it's a lost art. Like we were discussing this when we walked through the shop, the lost art of domestic manufacturing. It's
hard.
Is.
That's why, it's a challenge. I feel like I only shared with you like a tip of the iceberg when we were walking back there, like, even this thing that we have these 3 QC stations, that alone is just like a sliver, and I probably need more, because it's such a, to be sure of. First of all, I want to say I don't think it's impossible to be sure of every single thing that I believe that we can keep getting closer and closer, but will we ever be 100% perfect? Probably not. Will any manufacturing facility be? Probably not. It's like, I sometimes get on the phone with people who have way bigger facilities than we do, and like I mentioned, they're shaking their head. They don't know how they're still, how they're surviving, and I say inside to myself, "Oh man, if only you knew." So it's this relentless pursuit. Domestic manufacturing is hard, and it's a relentless pursuit, and the commitment is good and it's right, and the commitment is more like, this is our heart. We love making stuff here. The team and the company, it's the DNA is made in USA, right? So that's never going to go away. And so it makes me feel good. Like, what feels really good is I feel good when let's say, you made a certain amount of boots for the month or the week or the year or whatever. And then when you look at the statistic of, we had some, whatever, this might've been done wrong or that was incorrect. But when then you look at what makes me happy is when I see the ratio, when I see that, wow, okay, well, look how many successes we had. Look how many customers received their product and was like, right away, day one, it was perfect, and so, the mistakes that you make, everybody makes mistakes, and you just follow up with it and you make it right. But what makes me happy is when I just see like, okay, we had some mistakes, but we fixed them, resolving it, but look at the successes, look at the victories. And unfortunately, any failure you have always resonates louder and it gets you kind of down and stuff. But we remind ourselves often because we have so many to look at, and it's so awesome to see, like, we made that product right here, and this guy wore it for 7 years, 8 years, sent it back for a resole twice. He's on his, now he's getting his third set or whatever. And that first set he still has, like that is, money can't replace, like that's special. That ultimately is special. And plus it's our dad's name on it, JK Boots. So that's special to know that right now somewhere out there, more than one guy is wearing a pair of our boots who's just loving them and he's doing a really hard job and it's standing up to the test. That's like awesome. I mean, you could say that's kind of the reason that we do what we do. So it makes it worth the grind and the challenge.
I think you and I are a lot alike. You probably walk around and when you see somebody wearing a pair of JK boots, you're like, hey,
that's right.
Those.
That's right.
I mean, they did a complete reconstruction of the bottom of 21st Street in Lewiston. And when I drive through that intersection every day, going to work and coming home. And when they were doing that construction, I saw some parts from a company that we do business with and that we make parts for.
That's cool.
And they were using those parts in that reconstruction. And so every day I drive through that intersection, I think there's Alpine industrial parts right here, right now. And we see jet boats driving up and down the river. And my son, he gets tired of me saying it, but we'll drive by one of the places. I'm like, oh, we built parts for that, or we got parts on that. And but you're proud of that. And that's something that we have to instill in our kids. That's something that, even the older generation and generation like myself and like you, we have to be proud of that, and we have to make sure that they understand that, when you put your hand to do something, you do the best you can, and you can be proud of that when you walk away from it.
Yes.
So my younger son works in a tire shop, and he made a statement to me a while back. He goes, Dad, every single time that I do a job on somebody's car and put tires on or wheels on, they are putting their life in my hands, and I take that seriously.
Wow.
And we'll be driving down the road. He's like, oh, hey, I put tires on that truck yesterday. And I'm like, and it makes me feel good because he has a sense of pride in what he's doing.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to instill in our kids. That's what we have to instill in the next generation. Take pride in what you're doing. Do the best that you can. And we need to be humble. But on the same token, if you take pride in something, you're going to do well at it.
Yes. It's a spirit of excellence. You want to carry that spirit of excellence. And there is a pride to it, but it's a healthy pride. I don't even want to use the word pride. It's more of a like, oh man, it's pride in the sense of it's love more than anything. I think I love the product. I love the success. I love the victory. I love the integrity. And so when you do it out of love and out of this like drive and ambition to just be better, that's good. Like that's from the Lord. That's this spirit of excellence. It's this, understand like righteousness some people, in the church have different opinions, but I believe that God first makes you righteous and then you start doing good things. You don't start doing good things and then become righteous. Like Jesus made us righteous and then we do good things. So I, out of love, want to do all this good work, have a good company, like make people happy, good product. Like that's a pure and good desire. And ultimately, I could tell you a million stories of like some just, mistakes we've made and, and then the ways we fixed them and then people that maybe are upset with us, but it doesn't matter. It matters in the sense that make it right, fix it. But what matters more is keep the drive, keep the love, keep the ambition. And that's a universal principle. If we weren't doing boots and we were doing furniture or a construction company, those same principles would still 100%.
Well, you said something there that is the key to that. Jesus made us righteous.
That's right.
God looks at us as sinful man, but he looks at us through the filter of the blood of Jesus. That's right. Jesus made us righteous. I heard something the other day in the story of Nehemiah, and he was talking about, these battles. We're fighting. We need to stay focused on the battles that we need to stay focused on specific battles. And how do we as Christians battle? How do we fight the good fight? First, we pray. And second, get this, we do good.
That's right.
It says we fight evil with good. So you said, Jesus made us righteous, then we do good.
Yeah.
So that's part of our battle.
Yes.
Is, first we pray, but then we fight evil with good.
That's right.
We do good.
And we're built, I'm built like it's business, but if anything, I'm building it with almost the sense of like, I'm going to build this thing and make it awesome. It's for the kingdom. It's to do good. When I was younger, and maybe I don't do this much more, but I remember we used to do this where there were a couple of moments where I would like, when it's just you, your dad, and your brother, and you sold a pair today, and you're like freaking out, because it's awesome. That's the level that we came from, right? And I remember we used to, sometimes I'd like pray for the boxes that we would ship out, just like, you know what, let's just, this boot, bless this person and bless this individual. That's awesome. Trying to have a great business, trying to make customers happy, and honestly trying to do a good product. Like, it should bless that person's life. Mm-hmm. It should, and you could say it's just boots. And yeah, it is really just boots. Ultimately, I mean, we're not performing, brain surgery here. It is just boots. But even though with it being just boots, it can still bless that individual. And if I'm going to do anything, I want it to be done from that place of like, let it just bless this person. Mm-hmm. And when you put yourself in the shoes of the consumer, like, yeah, man, I mean, it is a higher price point product. It is, it is handmade. It is, and it's also serious too. I do believe that the individual who depends on their boots every day, like, it is serious, because if your feet hurt, if you're uncomfortable, if the boots are falling apart, you don't have time to worry about that. You got to focus on the task. And it's my job to make sure that our product meets that standard, that they don't have to worry about that. So it is an endeavor, not to glorify, like too much and not get too, dramatic about it. But if you really dig into it, it is serious. And it is something that we do take with pride, and definitely an ounce of like, hey, we need to do a good job, because people do depend on this product. And I'm sure that you guys relate 100%. If you're doing parts for whatever the stuff you mentioned, the construction on the street, like, that's serious. And if your parts aren't going to meet the task, I mean, that's heavy. Those are consequences.
You have to go at it with that attitude. Am I willing to put my signature on these parts that we're sending out the door to the customer? And you have to. I mean, you got to make sure that they're up to par. They meet the quality standards, because that's what they're paying their money for you. To you to do. And you have to take that seriously. And that's one thing that I do really appreciate about my crew at Alpine, is that they take every bit of what they do seriously. They don't do things halfway. They're completing the job, and they're doing the best that they can.
They're going all the way.
And I have a good crew. I got it might be small, but I got a solid crew of guys, and they take pride. Like I was telling you, they've been there a while.
Yeah.
Most of them have been there a while, and I take pride in that, to know that I've got guys that are proud of the quality of the stuff that they're producing.
That's awesome. That's so good. I just had this question, this thought. We're talking about kind of the integrity of the product, the integrity of the hunt. That's a big topic, right? I mean, that's huge, and I'm sure you could tell a lot of stories there, but how well does, I would say, hunting in the U.S. do with the culture of maybe repercussions for people who don't have the integrity for the hunt? And, do hunters come in with this attitude of like, this is kind of borderline sacred, and we want to treat this with all respect? As a teacher, do you make sure to instill that into the people that are getting their certification? And maybe like, how do you do that? How do you relay that message? That all relates back to what is in their heart. I'll just be honest with you, because there's people out there that don't do it for the right reasons, and there's people that do. And I think that instilling that in young people from when they first start is a big thing. Personally, my son, he started shooting, and he hasn't been real active in archery, but he started shooting a rimfire rifle when he was 7 years old. And I made sure to instill in him how important it was to make the very first shot count, and to always do well with what you're doing. And he repeated himself, repetition, that's how we learn. He repeated himself constantly. I'm opening the breech, and I'm loading the breech, and I'm closing the breech, I'm pulling the hammer back, firing the hole, repetitively. And as he got to be a good shot, I started to teach him more about the anatomy of the animal, make the first shot count. And, I got to be careful saying this, because if he listens to this podcast, I'm a decent shot, but that kid could outshoot me 9 times out of 10 and twice on Sunday. That's so cool.
He's such a good shot, and I'm so proud of him. And he won't take a shot unless he knows that it's going to be a quality shot. And he also understands that he owes it to that animal. He's taken the life of an animal from a game management perspective. There are those people out there that are just willing to shoot anything and everything that they can. And, and we all make mistakes. we all miss and we all make mistakes. I've made my fair share of mistakes in learning and understanding different things. And, I've done things that I probably shouldn't have with regards to, the integrity of the hunt that you were talking about. But I've grown to the point that, especially in teaching young people, you have to make sure that you owe it to the animal to make a good shot. You owe it to yourself.
I agree.
And, just like in business, you owe it to yourself to do quality work.
Yeah.
You're ultimately at the end of the day, like I said, you got to put your signature on it.
Yeah.
You got to be able to say, you know what, today, even just me personally, at the end of the day, I get ready to go to bed and I'm like, am I willing to just sign off on the day and say it was a good day? Have I done everything in my power to make it a good day? Have I done everything in my power to do things right and to follow through with the things I needed to follow through with? Yeah. And granted, I'm human. I make mistakes, and there's days and I say, I'm not going to sign this document.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to bed and start all over tomorrow.
Yeah.
But, the integrity of the hunt is a big deal. You have to make sure that you do things right.
Yeah.
And, like I said, there's people out there that have the mindset that they're going to just do what they want to do regardless of what the law says. And there's people out there that follow the law to the letter of the law. And there's people out there that live in the gray area.
Yeah.
And it all makes an impression on people that don't hunt or don't have those experiences. And you got to be careful about that stuff.
I've recently, in the last couple of years, I've done a lot of traveling abroad. So I was in Europe a couple of times, and South America. I've been into Africa, and let's just take Africa as an example. So I was in Ethiopia. Actually, I was there for a gospel crusade. It was in Ethiopia. I was in Addis, which is the capital, and then another city called Ambo. And for a long time. So I was born in America, born and raised. Love America's amazing, and I always wondered, there's so much law in America, like so much rule and litigation stuff, and sometimes I would wonder, it's just sometimes overdone. I was like, gosh, there doesn't have to be a code for that thing. It's like, geez, just loosen up a little bit. And then when I went to Ethiopia, I saw what it looks like when there's very little. Mm-hmm. Litigation, very little law and code, not like lawlessness like crime, but like building code and the streets, certain widths and lights and sidewalks and all these things, like the things that we don't really think about. And I think that this might translate well also kind of into hunting. I don't know what hunting is like in other parts of the world, but sometimes I would hear people. So I come from Slavic background. My parents immigrated here to America, and they love this country a lot, and everything I have is we owe to America and the opportunity. But other individuals, sometimes, and even other foreigner kind of backgrounds and communities, you come from a place that didn't have a lot of let's say litigation or rule, you come to a place that does. There's kind of sometimes this attitude, and we never carried this, but those rules are it's too much to follow, And I think that I don't know the details, but I think that there's a parallel here where there is a lot of rules and code in hunting, because we want to have a healthy, awesome, great country that has healthy wildlife for a lot of years to come. Yeah. And if it wasn't there, probably you would have a similar, like how I saw in Ethiopia, buildings falling down because they're not meeting up code and stuff like that. You'd probably have similar things happening here. I mean, can you speak on this? Do you agree with that? Is that true?
I do agree. And I think that our game and fish departments across the states, they do have that in mind. They do have they do a decent job of trying to make sure that the regulations are manageable and they're within reason. On occasion, there's some that obviously you get more of a traditionalist group that might bend the ear of that commission. And we found that in the archery industry for many years. The technology was advancing so fast that many states were keeping up with that, but some of the Western states weren't. And you would have a clique of traditionalists bending the ear of the commissions, keeping those regulations almost archaic and not advanced to the level of what technology had advanced to. In some regard, that was good, but in other regard, it's good to stay up with what's going on. But I do think our game departments, as a general rule, have a pretty good balance of what the regulations should be and what they shouldn't. And granted, you're going to find what you're looking for. So if you're looking for things to nitpick apart, you'll find it. If you're looking for, the quality of what they're doing, you'll find it too.
What would you say is the most entry level, easiest tag or hunt to do for a beginning hunter? And maybe what's like very extreme and advanced?
Well, hunting is never a guarantee. And, if people go at it from the idea that, I'm going to go out and I'm going to shoot my first deer and it's going to be a nice 5x5 whitetail buck, that's kind of pie in the sky.
Sure.
I mean, there are places that you could probably go do that. I think a deer hunt is the most popular hunt across the United States, just because that's the kind of the basic of entry of what people usually do. They're going to hunt for deer.
Yeah.
I would say one of the easiest, and I shouldn't say it that way, one of the most successful opportunities to hunt would be, hunting bears over a bait site. Now, it's not easy, and people say, oh yeah, well, you're going to feed them and it's easy. I challenge you, pack bait into a bait site on foot, on your back, every day, in order to get, the bears coming to your bait site. And I know in Washington you can bait deer, in Idaho you can't. And maybe in Washington a deer hunt over a bait pile might be a little more successful. And there again, that's the differences between the game management practices from one state to another. But I think those avenues would be the easiest is the wrong word, the most successful.
Highest rate of success.
Highest rate of success.
Potential rate of success would be the best way to say it.
Anytime you go to a place that has high population of a certain species of animal that you're looking to harvest, that's, you want to do your homework on that.
That's awesome.
You're not going to probably not going to go to Alaska and hunt white-tailed deer because they don't exist.
Right. Yeah.
In Alaska, you have Sitka blacktail.
Yeah.
And,
would you say like pulling a moose tag or something is one of the higher, more extreme kind of advanced level?
In Idaho and in Washington, a moose tag is a once-in-a-lifetime permit. So if you draw it, you have that opportunity. If you harvest, that's it. You're done. If you don't harvest, you can turn your tag back in, wait for a few more years, and start reapplying for that tag. You go to Alaska, Yukon Territories, northern British Columbia to do a moose hunt. You pretty much have to go with an outfitter for the most part, and then you're talking expense. So not just drawing the tag, but the expense of an outfitter that's going to be to the tune of $25,000, $30,000 in the Yukon.
Wow.
I mean, that's when we were talking earlier about it becoming a rich man's sport. Those avenues, you're looking at that.
Wow.
Probably one of the most challenging hunts that I personally have experienced is I went twice to Quebec on caribou hunts, and I was successful both trips, but there's so many of them, and you either hit it right or you hit it wrong with regards to the migration. And luckily we were able to hit it somewhat right the first time, and we did hit it right the second time that I went. And but it was challenging, but honestly it was one of the most pleasurable hunts that I've had, just because it was new for me. It was I'm not used to trudging around in the
new environment.
Yeah. Up in that type of an area where it's all spongy and mushy.
Yeah.
But it was great. The wind blew up there every day, and so it was challenging, but
That's
it was
really cool.
It was cool.
That's cool. Good.
There's a challenge in every hunt that you take part in, though. You just have to figure that out and then meet that challenge.
It's the nature of the endeavor. It is a challenge. Yeah, that's cool. Cool. Dustin, thank you. I really appreciate you coming
Thanks for having me up here.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed this today.
This was awesome, and it's a pleasure. And yeah, I mean, listening to you talk is actually very nice. It's very soothing. So I think hopefully our listeners have a similar experience. So thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. And again, that's Alpine Industrial Manufacturing.
Hey, can I do something with you real quick?
Yes, absolutely.
I want to pray over your business.
Please
before
do
we
that.
leave. Can
Yes,
we do
absolutely.
that? Is that okay to do that?
Of course,
on this podcast?
100%. Yes,
All right.
yes, do that.
Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this opportunity to come up here, take this tour, and do this podcast. And Lord, I just ask right now, just a blessing to be upon this company as a whole. Lord, you've given them vision, you've given them desire, and Lord, I just ask that you just meet those needs that they have and the desires that they have. Father, thanks again for just the opportunity to come up here and share time with a brother in Christ, Lord. But we believe that you're going to bless this business for the furthering of your kingdom. Lord, we just thank you and we praise you. We give you glory and honor. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Dustin. Appreciate that. Okay. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. See you on the next one.